Hey, hey, hey! What's going on? Hey, I just want to take a moment and just dive right in to one poem from MT here. I'm not going to try to pronounce MT Sketty, whatever. And the reason why I want to single this poem out is because people tell me OC poetry on Reddit. They're not ambitious. They just write limericks and disgusting stuff, or suicide notes. They're unserious. There's not a lot of craft going on there, and it's just not really literary work. Well, here we go. Here's some literary ambition, folks. Like it or not, OC poetry produces literary ambitious people and literary ambitious poems that want to tackle major problems of the Western tradition. Here we go. Plath finds the body of Bellerophon. Now, right? Sylvia Plath, doomed, famed legend of the late 20th century, mid to late. Probably one of the greatest craftspeople of free verse ever. Certainly master of dark imagery. Extremely resourceful, associative poetry that inspires new poets and poets at all stages in their career to this day. Just a brilliant fire that was snuffed out in this case probably by her untreated or untreatable at that time mental illness. There was a lot of that going on at that period in the kind of post-modernist period or confessional period. Guys like Berryman, Plath, Rethke, Lowell. I mean, just a lot of untreated or partially treated mental illness that didn't really end super well. But Plath, I think, is just so poignantly, sensationally kind of Kurt Cobain-esque painful that she puts her head in a oven and gasses herself to death while her children are locked away in another room. So it's awful, and perhaps half or more of her production of a lifetime of production is lost to us as a result. So MT here is going to take up this gauntlet of the painful and difficult Plath legacy, and I think compares Plath then to Bellerophon, or says that Plath will be discovering the body of Bellerophon, who rode Pegasus and was dethroned or kicked off Pegasus by the gods, and Bellerophon tumbles to earth, kind of almost like Satan is kicked out by God from heaven. He tumbles down. So there's a lot of that in mythology. Certainly, Bellerophon is not the only Greek. We have kind of the Icarus, Daedalus figures as well. But here it's clearly Pegasus, and Pegasus is kind of a great analogy for poetry itself. So I think MT is onto some major themes and issues. So here the I suppose, would be Plath. I offer my green apple still bloodstained. Why are the apples still bloodstained? Why are Plath's apples bloodstained? Legs spread fresh as colts on wet earth. Now I'm assuming that's Bellerophon, whose legs are spread fresh as colts. And I'm not sure what fresh as colts would mean. Don't follow that. And heart arrhythmics pumping. So that's perhaps Plath's anxiety. So we're already boldly ascribing these ideas and sensations to Plath, which I think is, a big risk. As his opening gambit. The blackberries gaze like bishops. Do bishops disapprove because of their, their kind of value judgment, their kind of loaded religious, Christian era that replaces this kind of Greek paganistic theme. So are they judging from Ivy Cathedra? Why cathedra? Why not cathedrals? What's accomplished by doing that besides pretense? Effervescent fluids, neon. Which effervescent fluids? Is it the blood? Is it the blackberries that have some type of effervescent fluids? As I bolt. So now Plath is going to bolt me, my stallion, whose Colossus I climb. Well, Colossus is a humanoid figure, and Pegasus is absolutely not. So that's a mismatch. The edges of the phantasma. What phantasma? Which I ride. Okay, so now Plath is on the Pegasus, I suppose. Repeating, perhaps, Bellerophon's folly. Undecided. Why undecided? It sounds pretty decisive to get on Bellerophon's Pegasus. Navigator. Who's the navigator? Is Plath the navigator? Is the poet or the speaker praising the navigator that is Plath? That she shows us direction. So show us that. How inspiring that is. Gouges Atlantic as trident. So that's a new image of the sea god. That's not, as far as I know, immediately relevant to this myth. So it's a complicated thing. The widening jaw of my dream raises these terrible wings of archangel proportion. So it's correct, perhaps, to detect, the archangel, I think, would be Satan, right? So Satan falling booted from heaven. I'm making that connection. I might be off. That's how I read that. Upwards, split air currents, rich and thick. What's that? Cumulonimbus drenches my feet, so up in the clouds. That's, I think, effective. My feet, port wine black, beating clap of stillborn hurricane. Okay, so we're ascribing the reaches, the loftiness to which Plath ascends, that she's essentially in the heavens of poetry, the upper echelons, the highest reaches and extremities of what poetry is capable of doing. I think the risk is we could have this effect where MT is kind of hitching their wagon to the Pegasus Plath train here and just kind of stapling onto the coattails of Plath. I think we need to do more than this. We need to perform a service that really shows a deep insight into Plath's oeuvre and Plath's poetry, and how humbled or changed, show and enact the change that has occurred in receiving and appreciating what Plath accomplished. So there is this awe of how high Plath has traveled, but how much of that is just essentially the respect or the greatness, the kind of fame of someone? Is not fame kind of this elevation that occurs? So do we love Plath because Plath is famous and eternal, or do we love Plath for specific things that her poetry does for us? Now, this poem has a lot of specifics, it has a lot of observation, but it's a little bit kind of all over the map, and I'm not sure whether it's really dialed in enough to really show us some specific thing about Plath's poetry and Plath's approach to poetry. Although I think that's pretty hard to do. So again, we have this ambition level where we're saying Plath, like Bellerophon, rides Pegasus and then is humbled. But I think that's difficult to say because that's ascribing some sort of morality or blame to the end of Plath's life that I'm not sure is fair. Plath had a mental illness. She wasn't dethroned or kicked off of her Pegasus because she was too ambitious. I think she was kicked off and dethroned because it was a fucked up world and she had a fucked up head. And women weren't able to balance the pressures of mental health, life, being a mother, and having a career I'm not saying that's all solved and magically fixed now, but clearly all of these things didn't work out in the instance of Plath. The one thing that did work out was the poetry. Everything else became fractured. I think that's punishment enough for her. But then to be compared to be accused of being too ambitious, I think. Now, not that that's the intent of MT here, but one might misread it this way. So I think we have to be. I respect and admire this desire to kind of tie in, Plath to this great Greek myth. Then have these reflections or echoes of Milton and the kind of the later English tradition. But I think we need to become more specific in our proposal at the onset about this Pegasus relationship with Plath, so that it doesn't feel exploitative, and we feel like MT hasn't selected Plath because Plath provides this kind of true crime kind of rubbernecking opportunity, which is going to attract clicks and interest. I think that would be a no-no. Now we could get a little tiny bit of that in there here and there, but we really need to, I think, stay centered on the art, especially since people don't know who MT is. Everybody's heard of Plath, and not a lot of people have heard of MT. So that automatically is going to make us kind of skeptical that is MT's motivations for doing this genuine and altruistic? Do they want to perform a service to the legacy of Plath? Is this something which the Plath estate, in essence, is going to accept? Now, I'm not saying you can't have fun. You can't, even lampoon. You could make a parody of Plath if you wanted to. And I don't think that there's absolutely anything wrong with that. But that's clearly not what this poem wants to do. I don't read this as a parody. And you could even make a poem that intends to attack Plath and say that Plath had serious faults. I don't think that's what this poem intends to do. I think if you were to try to strike a king, you must kill him. And I don't think that this poem intends to strike, but I think incidentally, accidentally, it could be construed as a kind of unconscious attack or envy of the speaker. So that if we become aware of those things, why can't I be as famous? Why can't I be as admired as Kurt Cobain or Sylvia Plath? And why has no one heard of me? Those types of feelings are natural. Every poet has those feelings. I have those feelings. I would like to be celebrated and I would like to be famous. That's every human being has those types of feelings. And if we can become cognizant of those as we're writing, we can leverage them. Milton has this great poem, Lycidius, where he talks, he writes a elegy for a poet friend of his, and he handles the whole thing very well with a mythical allusion. So that might be a poem that MT could study to model. And that's also something I cover in my forthcoming book, An Elemental Guide to Poetry in the Workshop. I cover Milton and Lycidius very thoroughly. At any rate, I want us to be able to get together and have fun. Hopefully you guys have fun hearing these videos, and I'd like for us to be able to get together and do some workshops or readings or just party up together sometime. So if you have AV equipment that works, your webcam works well, and you have a good mic, hit me up, DM me, and say, hey, I want to go over some of my poems with you. Could we find a time to do that? Maybe send me a test video, show me that your audio equipment is working well and ready to go. And then we could discuss some of your poetry as a portfolio together. And I think people would enjoy that on YouTube as well. So MT, I also want to thank you for offering me this poem. Again, if people aren't ambitious, we're not ambitious, we don't push ourselves, we're not going to get better. MT wants to get better. MT clearly, I don't know where they are in their development. I don't know how much schooling they've had. They could be older than me. They could be younger than me. They could be 12 years old. They could be, 73 years old. I have no idea. But clearly this is a person with a lot of intelligence, a huge amount of, resourcefulness, and whether they taught themselves a lot of this stuff or whether they learned about this stuff in a formal environment, all amounts to the same thing, which is bold, interesting, exciting language. So please keep that up. Please stay in touch with me, MT, and let's see how you develop just a little bit more focus, a little bit more specific service to Plath, and steering to avoid some of these potential pitfalls could make this poem from where it is to truly, and not that I'm the arbiter here. I'm not in charge. I'm no gatekeeper. That's not my job. But in my opinion, this is the type of thing that can work very, very successfully with small changes into becoming a decisively accomplished piece. Thanks for joining me, folks.